Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Dcon stage for our final panel of the weekend. Has everybody had a great weekend?
Yeah.
Samesies. On the stage with me right now, I have 5 different gentlemen that are all working in the next wave of collectability. I always love talking about the future of digital collecting because this is literally the forefront of where everything is going and where it could possibly go in the future. The rules are being made, they're being broken, and they're being reestablished hourly. And it's a constant evolvement. So it's been so interesting since, a few years back, this became a new thing. We had people proclaim that it was the future, and that future has definitely taken some different turns and twists along the way. Another interesting thing about Dcon, I've been with the event since 2016. Every year there's this pending doom on the horizon. And it's been politics, it's been the state of our world, it's been tariffs, it's been AI, it's been NFTs. Like there's always been this reason that art is gonna die. But truly creative people do what they're gonna do, creative problem solving. They use new technologies as new ways to tell stories. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. So I'm gonna start down at the end with my man Clem from Nounworks. Clem, you're an interesting dude because you have kind of, as I open up today's conversation, talking about the evolution of art and how it keeps finding a way, like those dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, you have established so many different careers where most people would have just stopped because they became one of the best people in sculpting. Like, you may not know this, but my man at the end of the table has probably sculpted some of the toys that you've collected for some of these artists out here because he's got the secret sauce on how to make these things real. And then he's just like, yeah, I think I could do something else. So let's talk a little bit about staying restless, Clem, and how you obviously love the arts, but you are open to new technologies and pursuing where you see the future going.
Yes, thanks so much for this. To be clear, I'm not sculpting anything. I'm basically right now, I'm art directing a small team of really dedicated, committed people.
But you were a sculptor.
Yes.
Yes.
And so early on in my career of sculpting, I got a really horrible case of tendonitis. And this is all I could do with my sculpting hands. So I had to immediately try to figure out what's next? How am I going to make a living? How am I going to support myself as an artist? And then I kind of stumbled into the fact that I'm a much better designer than I'm a sculptor. And then I have an ability to attract like-minded people around me. And then I can inspire them to do their best on my behalf. So I have my own little crew of minions. And we just work tirelessly together to make the best possible stuff that we can.
But one would argue the reason why you've been so good at taking things that we have been accustomed to as real world pieces and making them feel so articulated and so real in the digital space is because you know how to do it the old way, which made you a perfect candidate for the guy to figure out how to do it the new way.
Correct. Yes. And then also, I'm an artist and a collector by heart too, and I'm a huge fan of all of the artists that we ever work with. So my secret sauce, my special power is sort of to have a conversation with an artist like Frank or Jermaine or, in this, we're working with Nick, and to just basically be able to dilute their vision into something that I could work with, and then basically pull out their thoughts into a 3-dimensional tangible object that they can then share with their fans and people can buy. And then I also respect their process, and I'm crazy enough to entertain impossible ideas where we just kind of take that extra step of approvals when normally they'd say, yeah, fine, this is it, let's go. And I'm like, but, you can do this. How about we try this? What if we try this? So I'm also just adding my extra sauce because at the end of the day, when we're working with Blizzard and we're working with Halo, working with all these other IPs, none of it's mine.
Yeah.
My only thumbprint that I can add to any of these things is my creative vision of what that thing could be. So my goal always, with the Iron Giant that we made from Mondo, it's I want to make the one version of this product that if the world exploded and never made another Iron Giant toy, that would be the Iron Giant toy that everybody just recognizes the best.
You said you wanted to sort of add to art, pull it out, and build up on it. That has a lot to do with what David Yu's company does, VeVe.
Yeah.
And, David, I remember a couple years ago, we had a mob full of people, And I felt like I was at the Wolf of Wall Street because these guys were just like, NFTs, let's buy digital, let's go crazy. And the one thing that people kind of like pumped the brakes on VeVe back in the day, which I think has been your strong point, is that you guys created a closed ecosystem, which is why I think you were able to get lots of huge entertainment companies to buy in on licensing, because it wasn't the Wild West. It was digital and it was new technology, but it wasn't just like, on the blockchain where bad things happen. And it was like a really like sort of controlled ecosystem that was collector forward. It felt very safe, but also very exciting because it was new. Let's talk a little bit about how that business model, I'm guessing, has really been a strong point for the company over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, thank you. So we have minted and sold around 11 digital collectibles, NFT. And like you have mentioned, the major selling strong point has been IPs. And working with the major studios have really elevated us to that level. And other parts of it is where we're moving into is that digital background, where physical and digital comes together. And it's something that we're trialing really new here at DesignerCon this year, where users can buy a physical product and get a digital twin.
Yeah.
Whether it's a comic book or art prints or toys, that's what we're doing this weekend. And we always thought the market, you're always going to have the early adopters when the market's going to be going up. And we see the long term being that new generation, especially the Gen Zs, you really need to have product that's very relevant to them. But ultimately, the new generation of kids are growing up, they're playing games, they're buying digital skins, they're going to find that digital assets going to be relevant from them. So we really do embrace and really believe that this is here to continue to grow.
Speaking of that same hybrid of both physical and digital, next to David, we have Shane, who is from McFarlane Digital Collectives. And, everybody remembers McFarlane when it came on the scene. It was action figures with a whole new lens and a whole new scope on what that actually meant, with the way that they were articulated. And you'd never seen that much detail before, and whether it was IP from the big screen, it looked so real, or the sports, to get, jocks into collecting action figures or playing with dolls, as I would like to say. That was a really interesting moment in that space. But now we see the company adapting again and getting in digital. And Shane and I were talking earlier about, the digital that you speak of. It's a lot like where the music industry's gone, because when we look at media, the music industry was the first one to go because the file size worked with the first wave of internet. And what saved TV and films was that it was a gigabyte. And it was hard to steal a gigabyte, but a 2.5 megabyte MP3 was very, very easy. And so when we look at this sort of evolution of media and where it's going, and we see the toy now going into that digital space, it's a really interesting evolution of the company and the products that you guys offer.
Yeah, absolutely. That one of the things that I really love about what McFarlane's doing is we're doing phygitals as well as VeVe. And in the stores, when you go and you see a physical toy on the peg, if you see McFarlane Toys Digital in the corner, what that tells you is there's a card for a redemption card inside the package. So you get kind of a 2-for-1. You get the physical toy as well as a digital toy. And one of the things that Todd had talked about, which I really take to heart and I think is important, is this idea that there's a lot of people in the world that want to collect, but collecting physical can be prohibitive if you don't have enough storage space. And so allowing people to collect digitally opens that world of that hobby to them. So that's what got me involved.
Yeah, and the conversation that we were having is like when, music was the first to go because of the internet, and now the new evolution of music is people buy vinyl. But when you open up the vinyl, there's a card in there where you can actually listen to the music. So you get a way to listen to the music, but you get the vinyl to show that you love music and you love collecting. So you guys have hit that same hybrid with a different retail vertical, which just goes to show the evolution and how it's always looking forward. But that gets very interesting because you guys work with lots of different licenses and lots of different brands. And all of this stuff is just moving so fast. It's like what you guys are doing today maybe will be what you're doing in a year or so from now, and as you run that part of the corporate or the company, I'm sure that evolution is something that you're always trying to kind of keep your eye on of like, I know we're doing good now, but where are we going next?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting what companies will allow their products to exist digitally and what they won't allow to exist digitally. And I think that's just going to continue to evolve over time as people be warm to the idea of digital collecting. I think that that'll shift over, and it'll be easier for people to let their intellectual properties exist. It's just going to take a little bit of time, I think. As with with music, there was a lot of MP3s that were downloaded prior to iTunes offering their music digitally and Google App Play Store. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time before people wrap their head around it.
For sure, and as David said, it's becoming part of a new generation's culture where they're used to skins and, they're used to buying something with real money that they'll never touch. And that's not off-putting to them. That's been basically their entire life, and some parents are like, I'll give you money for anything, but I'm not going to give you money for that, which I get it because they're looking at the world through their lens, but through their child's eyes, like, I don't understand the disconnect that we're having. But speaking of things always evolving, over here is Bob from the London Police. My man, when you and your partner started doing all this as visual artists, making posters and getting into toys, did you have any idea that you would find your studio being involved in it looks like art, it feels like art, but you can never touch it because you guys existed in making tangible products. But not only did you do that, you made sure the products were silkscreen, and if they were sculpted, you could see the artist's touch in there. So you guys always went far out of your way to make sure everything looked handmade, perfect, but handmade. And now you're in a space where it's kind of handmade, but also a hand will never touch it. Let's talk about that a little bit from the evolution of an artist's perspective.
Yeah, so we were actually the most unlikely people to ever get into anything digital. Like you said, we basically we use marker pens and we draw on paper and on canvas, and we really prided ourselves on our craftsmanship. What happened was, as you just explained, that things started changing. We were approached by different partners, and VeVe was one of them a few years ago, and Suye, who we work with and partner with in Amsterdam. But we were actually, because we had so little experience, it was so crucial for us to partner up with people who had the skill set, because we're so opposite to digital that we could never do it on our own. So that was what we really need to do. Is like, okay, who's doing it well, and let's jump on board with them.
And as sort of old world analog artists that are now in a digital space, are you finding digital customers that are coming back around to buy a silkscreen print that they want to hang in their living room?
Yeah. So that's something we've really been encouraging. We have a key card, a membership key card.
Yeah.
And what we tend to do is that is obviously both physical and digital. And then we incentivize anyone who wants to start collecting with us. Like this weekend, people could come over to our booth, pick out a beautiful print. So we get to sort of mix our old fan base with new fans and encourage that, really give people something digital, give people something physical. And that is, for us, a golden ticket. It's really working well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a nice full circle moment. And it's like, as anybody who's doing something in the creative arts, the number one thing is you need an audience. So whatever lines of distribution you have to build that audience, it's going to help you. Nick, let's talk a little bit about your company, because it's leaning a lot into digital characters, also real world product, but it's also really leaning into world building and storytelling. And I know whenever I've been at Dcon and I've spoke to producers and people in Hollywood, the number one thing they always say is, we're looking for people that are building worlds. I'm like, well, I see a lot of worlds being built out here. So what worlds are you looking for? So let's talk a little bit about doing all this through the lens of not only making product, but storytelling.
I mean, world building is, so I should probably say that I come from the film industry, specifically animation. Started my career at Sony. That's where they were doing Spider-Verse, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, things like that. And we're world builders by nature. The whole team comes from that background. We wanted to build our own IP, and it's just a natural trajectory. It's when you're building, characters, you want to build the world around them. And digital collectibles for us made sense as storytelling units, little pockets of time a really sustainable way to grow an IP, because through those collectibles you can kind of like test product market fit on certain characters or just these ideas that you have. And it's a great if you're an artist like our whole team, it's a great way to basically crowdfund the whole thing through those digital collectibles and just test stuff. It's a test kitchen for us, basically.
Do me a solid. I'm dyslexic. Please say the name of your company because I don't want to try to guess it.
All right. So I'm one of the founders at Claynosaurz, and this was built by a bunch of animators in the industry. And what Claynosaurz is a digital native transmedia character brand. Basically, that means we meet the audiences wherever they're at. We do media, we do physical products, we do gaming, and all of that is interfaced through the digital collectibles. So the digital collectibles can basically speak to every one of our verticals, and it's kind of like the glue that connects everything.
And one of the things I love about what you've done was some of your IP, not all of it that you've created, is there's a very like hand touch version to some of it. Like some of the things I saw looked almost like inspired by old stop animation, and you could see like texture in it. And even though it's a digital product, you're sculpting it through a lens that looks like we can reach out and touch it. And I love that sort of contradiction.
Yeah. I mean, we were inspired by Aardman and all those things for sure. But it was just a design language, and it really depends on the characters that we're building. Sometimes they look like clay. Sometimes they might look a little bit more like Pixar. But it's really just a character design choice and a way to make them feel like a little bit more tactile. Yeah.
Shane, when you work for a company that does large volumes like McFarlane does, and we get into a moment where, they're dealing with navigating global events like tariffs, do you get a little bit more pressure on your shoulders of like, hey, you're the no tariffs guy. We need to get a little bit more product going on your team?
I mean, yeah, definitely the digital team was pressed to try and move things forward as we dealt with the tariff situation. Luckily, that worked itself out, so we're good. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the advantages. The big advantage of digital is that you don't have to deal with any of that. There's no shipping. There's no product that you have to move around the world. As far as I'm personally concerned, the idea of having your collection with you at all times, is really powerful for me. Having a large physical collection, it can be a lot to deal with as far as storage, and if you ever have to move, what do you do with all of it?
It sometimes becomes a burden. I mean, you love it,
yeah, and
you emotionally can't part with these things. Like, I don't want to throw it away, I don't want to sell it,
yeah.
But it does become something that kind of slows you down a little bit.
Absolutely, it does. And my family and I have moved quite a few times, and lifting up. I have a large comic book collection, and lifting up long boxes can get exhausting, and you start to ask yourself, why am I toting all this stuff around? I can have it digitally on my phone and have it all with me at all times.
Yeah, when the basement floods, these items are still good, right?
Absolutely.
But I think about what we're looking at here, though, is like all of your companies are showing that in a world that you kind of can't predict where it's going because of, economic events, political events, all that type of stuff. Diversity is really the creativest way through it, because everybody here has a couple of different ways to go. Like, VeVe getting involved with physical goods, and that's not where the company started. It was purely digital, and McFarlane going the other way and adding on digital. And with Shane's company that I can't pronounce, just literally kind of trying to do a little bit of everything and looking at story forward driven. And Clem was given a physical thing that happened to him and pivoted in a different direction. So we're really looking at a lot of diversity here, and that's kind of the way that an artist will get through the other side when you don't know what the future is going to throw at you.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, please.
Clint, would you mind showing your story about your physical collection? I don't know if that's too personal, but
You mean the hurricane?
yeah.
Well, I live in North Carolina in Asheville, and last year we had most of our town just got wiped out.
I remember.
Right, we had a flood in my basement, 4.5 feet of water. So there's nothing like fortunately I didn't have a lot of the stuff that I value down there, but it was still 20 years worth of work. And you can't even go downstairs because there's 4.5 feet of water. You just kind of peek down, and all you see is just black water, and just your shit's just floating everywhere. Your precious collectibles are just bloop, 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 bloop. And then you just kind of start to think about, what do I value in this world? And then how do I recreate this collection that I've acquired over this time? And what does it mean? And then also as everybody here gets older, eventually, like, oh, you could be like a major hoarder like me. Like I have stuff from everything that I've ever made and like friends collectibles and like all these valuable things. But eventually, like, this meat bag's going to pop, right? And it's like, and my kid's going to have to deal with it. My wife's going to have to deal with it. And then it's like the idea of like even just taking the stuff and putting it on eBay is such a task, because then you're like trying to figure out which one of these kids do I get rid of first. And, you have all these memories and all these connections, and then basically you just get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And like digital like fixes all of that, because you don't have to like take a photo. You don't have to like, everything's in mint condition. The only thing that's kind of different is like your unboxing experience of the physical goods. And, basically that's why I'm like so bullish on digital collectibles, because eventually, not today, maybe 10 years from now, we're all going to have a 3D printer in the house where we're not going to have to own everything. Like if you want to play with this toy, you just boop, boop, and it just comes up out of a vat of thing and you just play with it. There's so much cool 3D printed stuff here already that you'll play with it, you'll get rid of it, because right now it's like, my son's a hoarder. I still have all of his freaking Thomas trains and all of his cars and all of his Transformers. And like, he doesn't want to get rid of it because he's like, I'm going to save it for my kids. It's going to be worth a lot of money someday, Dad. Don't you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we think the same way. Like you have no inventory risk as a company.
Right.
You have global distribution in about 1 second, right? And anybody can either purchase these collectibles or sell them if they want to, which is a huge value add for the consumer as well. There's no wear and tear. You have absolute provenance, which anyone that's in digital can understand that like it's very easy to inscribe that information on that digital collectible and it lives forever. So even for the collectors, there's a lot of advantages. But you guys were talking about like how kids consume content. They're already buying gun skins on Roblox and Fortnite. Like digital is not weird to them. There's going to be a massive culture shift.
Yep.
Only when you're really leading into like digital collectibles, let's say outside of like the Roblox, Fortnite ecosystems, then you also have ownership, interoperability. A parent today cannot, if the kid, well, I'm talking about kids now, but this is the same for everybody. If you outgrow the play pattern of your Fortnite assets or collectibles, you can't offload them. You can't do a garage sale. That's considered, or anybody that was like a World of Warcraft player or Diablo, if you're selling your character, that's black market. Not allowed to do that. With how we operate our digital collectibles, and perhaps I know what I'm saying is a little bit of a gray zone, but we are on chain, which means everything interoperates across the entire internet. You can do whatever you want with those assets forever. We don't over-index hype. We're using that tech because it's really about the historical provenance of it. But there's so many advantages for the companies, for the artists that want to use these technologies and make digital collectibles, and for the fans. And also, there's no better CRM. Like it is the best loyalty program because, like you guys said, you can carry those collectibles in your phone, right? And we can also segment different types of collectors. So a collector profile is much more effective than an email list. Like if you've shown up to 2 different Dcons, I will know because you have those 2 collectibles on your phone and I can do something special for you. So we think about those things all the time.
That's amazing. And it really just kind of goes to show like how our digital footprint is going to curate so many of the experiences that we get as technology grows and we keep clicking the OK box on things and we keep finding new ways to pivot around. When do you think, do you guys try to market to the generation that doesn't understand digital? Do you lean in young, or how, David, can you speak a little bit on that and like kind of creating that information curve for people to understand how digital collecting goes?
Yeah, quite surprising. Our average user age is from 35 to 55.
Wow.
And like Shane had mentioned earlier, a number of us getting older, we're moving around and we're bringing their collections with us on and on. And a lot of time you see the new generation, they buy a collectible, they don't even open the packagings anymore. The comic book, the minute you get it, they send it to CGC to get graded. It comes back in a plastic case, you can't even read it. So they read it on VeVe now, and they have that opportunity to resell it to another user once they read it. But going back to what you talked about, that older generation, we have contents that is very nostalgic. We recently released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We done Street Fighters. We even gone back to stamp collecting. So we have released USPS stamps on VeVe and coins. So bringing that relevant of collecting from day one and bring that nostalgia to that audience and get them into the first step into digital. And we have seen a lot of these grandparents and parents collecting way beyond their children's on VeVe. So that's a surprising thing.
Yeah, I just want to throw you flowers a little bit because like yesterday I saw a bunch of VeVe collectors that were on their phones, like a Pokemon trading game, right? Like, and they're like, oh my God, I got this one, I'm looking for this number, which is special. And they can do that here without carrying all the boxes and all the toys with them. And you hit the nail on the head. You will never have to grade that item. If it comes from the company's address, like that is pure provenance. It is graded from the moment you get it, and that is like pure. And I think that's where it's all heading.
One of the things too, like I've never met Bob before, but I'm a big fan, and I kind of go back in time, designer toys, when Eddie Yip at Adfunture was making your vinyl toys, and he approached me to kind of problem solve some of the technical issues on the fact that there's gravity in the real world, right? And your figures have these little thin arms, and everything comes out broken when you try to ship it, right? So the thing about digital collectibles is there's no gravity, right? And then you can add animation to every single thing that you make. You create unique, fun experiences with everything, and then the audience, the collector, gets to interact with those experiences through AR activations and just make funny animations. Like all of our Nounish friends that we dropped on VeVe today and last year at Dcon, they're all fully animated, and people are having a ton of fun just goofing around with the figure at any scale. You could stand next to it, like, hey, what's up, dude? And and they're all dancing and they're like interacting. You can't do that with the physical. And a lot of the times, like VeVe is a digital first, and then you buy a physical if you want to, or you have the room. Like McFarlane is like a physical first, and then you just buy the digital if you want the digital thing. So you're not kind of fighting that audience that might be against NFTs and there's all this static, but you're kind of eliminate the need for all of those minimum orders. So like maybe you just have, like you made like 300 physicals and that's all there is of that thing, and like you're the first one to claim it and you own it, then there's no warehousing of that too.
Yeah, I'm curious how it will work in the future. For example, when my dad bought a VCR, right, back in the day, we bought a VCR, it was like $300 and it did 12 things. 6 years later, it did 4 things and it was worth nothing. And so the digital products you guys are selling today, will they be like, you buy an iPhone today and a year from now, it does 100 things that you weren't using it for when you first got it? Do these products have the availability to grow with new technologies that are coming down the road? So something that I maybe bought from VeVe back in 2022 has a capability that we're not even aware of for 2032 when I'm wearing goggles on my head and doing all this wild shit.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that's where the evolution of digital collecting is taking us into. So number one is, since I was here last time, we have launched VeVeverse. This is an ecosystem where users can bring any assets that they own on VeVe onto a world of your own to build. It's almost like your home, digital home, your second home. And you can invite your friends to come on. You can change the color of your carpet, wallpaper, your lighting, shading, everything. And where we're moving into next stage is that all that utility value around. I mean, one of the major things around that early stage of the boon of NFT is around that utility. So we have seen what VeVe Collectibles can do. Now we have music, we have animation. The products are getting much better than where it was when we first launched 5 years ago. And the key part where we're moving into next phase, apart from the physical side, is how can we have that utility value with other platforms where you're purchasing a collectible on VeVe and that code represent or give you access to other gaming assets or appears to be an asset in other platform, whether if it's a character, accessory, or a sticker, and so on. The digital collecting is only the start. And then you talked about the wearable device. Where we're really looking forward to is the AR goggles, your VR headset. VR didn't get a huge uptake because the pricing or people might, hesitate to put the whole thing on. But when we go through the AR glasses, what Meta, Google, and all these major multinational companies bringing out, we really will see a new digital layer. Apart from seeing your email and messages, what you really want to see is your Spider-Man next to you, Batman, or your comic book you're reading it as you're on the bus. Or when you look at through your empty wall, you're seeing digital artworks being presented when you go home, and you can easily change that digital artwork without physically taking it on and off. So it's a new medium. For us, the user's experience is going to be very important, and moving forward, we'll continue to improve that.
So yeah, one of the coolest thing about digital collectibles is that they're programmable, which means they can evolve over time. If we want to tie cool experiences to them, whether the character might evolve or whether it acts sort of like a passport into other things into our ecosystem, the collectible itself, rather than the user, is the account, which means you log in through that collectible. We as a company or as creators can kind of identify those different collectibles and tie consistently cool experiences around it. It also means that if you tie it to a physical, or let's call it like a phygital, then you can forever extend the life cycle of the physical. So for example, I get a McFarlane toy or one of the Claynosaurz toys, and we tie all of our physicals to digitals. And once you get that digital, you're tying perpetual experiences right back to that physical toy or statuette or vinyl or whatever it is, such that there's always a point of entrance back into that physical unit, which is so awesome.
And I think to kind of what you guys are speaking about is, it takes that one application that really makes people want to buy new technology. Like the Apple Vision Pro, I looked at it and I told all my friends, I'm like, I don't think our brains can understand what that can eventually do, but it doesn't do that now. So a lot of people are like, it's too expensive, it's too clunky, I'm not going to buy in. But we see Meta probably losing money on making $800, $900 glasses that now have in-lens display, or the Gen 2s, it's like a camera and AI in your ears. We're seeing it get there. And the company that cracks that must-buy cultural moment, that will get people to take that next step forward, And it's just all missing that one activation piece where bro, you don't have this? And that's really kind of that FOMO is what will get people to buy that product or go there. But I'm a firm believer that our brains can't understand what's getting ready to happen next. And I was somebody who's I don't want to do that. And then 8 years ago, I was at an Adobe Max, and they kind of showed a dream cast of what they would want to do with augmented reality. And it really got my mind open to there's a whole world that we're missing out on, this sort of, fourth dimension maybe that can bring everything together. Shane, you work with in this industry, traditional kind of, business model, traditional media. Do you see when you're sitting in boardrooms and there's different pockets of the company together, are the other verticals of the business understanding more about what you're doing? Are they looking to give more budget and lean more into that? Does the rest of your version of corporate America, corporate toy America, kind of understand where this is going? Or is it a leap of faith that you understand where it's going?
That's a good question. I definitely think that there's a segment of McFarlane that is more supportive than others.
Yeah.
I know that we just had a conversation recently about this, and they've recommitted to digital moving forward. So yeah, there's always going to be that kind of old school thinking within the company and new school thinking, but the board is on board with moving forward with digital.
And that doesn't surprise me at all, because it's just people just can't quite see it yet, but everybody here does. And I love seeing the evolution of it, and people keep taking changes. And real quick, as we're wrapping up, David, when you started producing physical goods, what was kind of the surprise as somebody that existed totally digital when you start being oh, you mean I got to wait for these things to show up, or now I got to put them in a warehouse. Like, what was some of the kind of the pain points of adding that to the business model?
Yeah, I mean the difficult side is obviously the digital products. When you're making the physical, they have a different touch points in terms of supply chains, the shipping. So digital goods, like this morning we dropped Klim's product, to 182 countries all around the world instantly, same time. But if we were to ship it, which we are for the people who's coming to redeem or redemption process, you have to wait. And that's one of the major problem, living in New Zealand, Australia, we always get our comic book and toys 2 to 3 months behind everyone. And the price is double the price because the shipping and the tax on it and the margin into the retail store. So it's not really just around that supply chain and physical, but also the cost of doing it. As we know, the inflation across shipping and everything is just going up hugely. But we also do understand in that connection of someone holding that artwork or holding that comic book, smelling of the paper, opening that packaging, that smile. Some of the audience here, and we've seen it throughout the whole weekend at DesignerCon, is that it brings people joy. And what we do is we use this opportunity to bring our community together with us to celebrate together. And man, that community originally was digital first, but when you bring them into a physical, humans still have that emotional touch, and it feels warm and great. And that's what we do the best.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've always really respected about you guys is what a community-driven company it was and the mindset. So, kind of wrap up. I want to end today with you, Bob, because like these guys are all sort of futurists, right? They're taking their own company or a company they're a part of, and they're trying to guide it someplace, and they're going to a destination that a lot of people here can't quite understand or even know, but they're obviously brilliant and they know where they're going. But you're an interesting person because London Police, you and your business partner, like you've almost found a second wave of your career, which was already a good career. I mean, you're traveling the world. People love you guys. You're super charismatic. The art reflects the personality of the collaboration between you two. But like this has added a whole nother dimension to your company. And I believe you guys probably did it on a pretty huge leap of faith. So real quick, talking to other visual artists that are like putting a toe in or debating, like what's your advice on sort of taking that leap of faith and finding good partners and finding that next evolution in your storytelling and your creativity?
Well, really, you've got to find something that actually makes sense and matches with what you're doing. Otherwise, it's too big a disconnector. So I'll give you an example of what we're working on now, which we talked about utility, is that we will make a huge mural painstakingly made by hand. And our work sort of depicts a fantasy world, and it's kind of like a stop frame in a scene that we've imagined. And how cool is it that you can just tap that NFC chip next to the mural, stand back with your phone and watch that whole scene come to life?
Yeah.
Right? So that brings actual real unity between the two technologies, between the pure craftsman, old school, and suddenly this beautiful animated, colourful, energetic animation people can carry around in their pockets. So you have to find the best animators to do that. You have to find the best team of digital people that can actually facilitate the technology to work with your thing. So you've got to find people that are on the same page and share that, like you said, a certain energy that you want to bring to the table. And if we're talking about our peers and our artists around us, we are all talking about that. Who are the people? Who do you want to work with? And we were lucky because we were kind of streamed in to the whole digital thing through artists in this community who, like I mentioned, working with Ron English, and he had already had a great relationship with David from VeVe. So it was a very soft landing for us because we were looking to our peers and getting their guidance, and we were and that's what happens. Quality finds quality.
Yeah. Well, it's been so great to talk to you guys. I look forward to wherever you go next. And I'm absolutely fascinated by this. And like the best advice I could give to anybody, and I don't know shit, is like just keep an open mind and just realize the rules today are going to evolve to not to what an algorithm wants, but to what an audience wants. And I think what makes all of this successful is it's community first, right? Like if people aren't going to buy it, if people aren't going to enjoy it, what's the point to it? So all the evolution points we've seen have all been community driven, which I think is super positive that at the end of the day, it's digital, but it's about people, right? Thank you so much for hanging out, having this conversation with us. We appreciate you all. Let's make some noise
Thank
for
you.
our panel.